Is it possible to make delicious crispy wings from a frozen chicken wing? In this video, I'm gonna take everything that I've learned about making crispy chicken wings in the oven and apply it to these frozen wings to see if I can make them as crispy and delicious as fresh wings. For the full ingredient list, check the description box below, but enough talking, let's get cooking. So we're gonna start off with these raw frozen chicken wings, and these things are frozen solid. Normally, I would defrost them by leaving them in the fridge overnight, uncovered, or I would take them and I put them in the microwave. We're gonna get these done right now, and I don't have a microwave in the studio. Let me show you how I think that I can make these crispy. We're gonna put the convection setting on, and I'm gonna put the oven really low at like 225. I'm gonna use this to soften up the outside of the wings before we season them. There is no way any of the seasoning is going to penetrate or stick to the outside of the wings if I try to season them frozen and then throw them right in the oven. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna put them on the baking sheet. They're gonna go in the oven on that lower temperature for about 10 or 15 minutes just to soften up the outside, and then we're gonna season them. I'm not being really particular about how I'm arranging them on the baking sheet. I'm just throwing them on there because they're gonna come off when we season them. So these are gonna go in the oven for about 10 or 15 minutes, just until the outside's a little soft. So now what we're gonna do is we're gonna mix our crispy additives. Based upon our previous videos, what we're gonna go with is a mixture of baking powder, potato starch, and rice flour. The combination of these three things on top of those wings is gonna give the best chance to get these wings crispy. So we're gonna take about a tablespoon of this baking powder, a tablespoon of this potato starch, and a tablespoon of this rice flour. Now we're gonna mix the seasoning right into these crispy additives. So first we're gonna add a little bit of my base seasoning. This is a blend of garlic powder, onion powder, salt, and pepper. And another thing that I've been really liking is a McCormick's Rotisserie chicken spices. This is basically this plus some paprika, but I love just mixing random spices, and this seems to be a good one that mixes with the base seasoning really well. And I'll put about a tablespoon of that in as well. So now we'll whisk this all together so it's nice and well incorporated. So now with this seasoning mix, we got our crispy additives and our flavor enhancers. So far, so good. I really like what I see here, that the outside has been thawed out a little bit. They're definitely still frozen on the inside, but now I think these have potential to have the seasoning and the crispiness stick to it and penetrate. So before we get started with this, let's preheat our oven to our higher cooking temperature, so when we throw these back in, the oven's nice and hot. So we're gonna raise this up to 425, and we're gonna use this for our cooking temperature for the rest of the time while these are in the oven. So now I'm gonna take these wings and I'm gonna put them inside of this bowl. Before we add our crispiness and spice mixture, let's put a little bit of olive oil on the outside of these wings. That's gonna help adhere the crispiness mixture and the spices to the outside. It's also gonna give a nice cooking fat for the chicken wing skin to get crispy. Now let's take a couple of hefty pinches of our crispiness and spice mixture and coat these wings really nicely. I'm just gonna go in there and give these a mix. These starches and flours are also gonna remove a lot of the moisture from the outside of these wings. I think these things got a pretty good shot of getting nice and flavorful and crispy. I'm just gonna put a little bit more of this in there. So these wings are now nicely coated in this spice and crispiness mixture. So now let's get them back on this baking tray. Before I put them on there to prevent any sticking, I'm gonna take some of this avocado oil spray and spray the grate very lightly. Now I'm gonna be a little bit more precise with my wing placement, making sure that there's plenty of room in between the wings so that there's plenty of space so the air in between can circulate and give them the best chance of getting crispy. And before these go in the oven, I'm gonna give them just a really light spray on the top with the same oil that I put on the grate. And now these are gonna go in this preheated 425-degree oven for about 20 minutes before we give them their first flip. So just in case these wings don't get crispy enough, but I still want to make sure that they're absolutely delicious, I'm gonna make a blue cheese dipping sauce and a traditional buffalo sauce so that if they're not that crispy, we could just toss them with the sauce, and then how crispy they are really doesn't matter. And it'll also definitely give it a big flavor enhancement. And just, I love buffalo wings that are dipped in blue cheese sauce. Let's make our blue cheese sauce first, because that's got to sit in the fridge for a little bit so the flavors all come together. So for the base, a little 0% Greek yogurt. You can also use sour cream. I find that these are just interchangeable. A couple of tablespoons of some mayo. Now we're gonna put in some of these blue cheese crumbles. When I'm putting these in, I like to really crumble some of the blue cheese and really smush it in, and then I'll put the bigger chunks in. A little white vinegar, a little bit of my base seasoning. So now we're gonna thin this out with a little buttermilk. Make sure you give this a good shake. And you can use whole milk too, but I feel like buttermilk gives it a nice tanginess that really makes this sauce. And before I put this back in the fridge, I'm gonna check the consistency of it, and this looks pretty good. So now we're gonna add a little fresh element. We're gonna add some fresh chives. And so the little trick for chopping your chives is wrap them up in a paper towel. So first, let's get the ends as nice and even as possible. We're gonna roll them inside of the paper towel. We're gonna trim off the raggedy ends, and now we can chop our chives nice and fine. Maybe we'll put a little bit more. So I'm gonna unroll it, push the chives forward into the paper towel, re-roll, and rocker chopper. And now let's give this a mix. And now we're gonna put this in a container and let it sit in the fridge. So these wings have been in the hotter oven for about 20 minutes. Let's see how they're doing. So far, so good. These are looking spectacular. Let's flip them and send them back in the oven. So I'm gonna be really careful, because usually at this point we see a lot of sticking, but so far, so good. These wings are looking mighty good and have super potential to get crispy. In all my crispy chicken wing videos, the #1 complaint is how long it takes, and I don't make the rules. It takes about an hour to get wings crispy in the oven. Any shorter, and I'll tell you that they're not as crispy. And even with an hour in the oven, they're definitely not overcooked. So these are gonna go back in the oven for another 20 minutes, and then they might have to go back in for another 20 after that. I don't know. We'll see what they look like in 20 minutes. I've never worked with frozen chicken wings before. So now let's make a traditional buffalo sauce. This is really easy. We're gonna take half a stick of butter, put it in this small saucepan, and into this saucepan we're gonna put some Frank's RedHot. The ratio is about 1-to-1, maybe 2-to-1. I'm just gonna eyeball it. And now we're gonna put a little bit of, I'm gonna try a new pronunciation here. This is a Worcestershire sauce. And this is a great application for a garlic paste, because this will take me forever to get garlic this consistency, but I find that these garlic paste in the tubes is perfect. We'll just put a little squirt of this in there. So I'm gonna put this on the stove, and we're gonna let it simmer for a little bit until the butter melts and all the flavors come together. So at this point, these are looking pretty good. I'm gonna inspect these and think, these are looking pretty good so far. Based upon what I know about crispy chicken wings, I'm gonna flip these one more time and send them in the oven for about 10 more minutes to ensure that they're cooked all the way through and we're getting maximum crispiness. So at this point, usually I do get a lot of sticking, and that's usually a sign that we're close to the end. So I'm gonna be really careful not to damage any of the outside or really minimize the amount of damage that I'm doing as I'm flipping. But these are looking pretty good so far. If you get any pesky ones that are a little difficult to flip, just take your time and be a little persuasive. If you try to rip it off, the skin will fly off, and that's never any good. There we go. So let's send these back in the oven for about 10 more minutes so they finish cooking and get nice and crispy on the outside. Now, these are looking mighty crispy. I'm gonna let these chill out for about 5 minutes before I touch them to let them cool down. And as they're cooling down, they'll even get a little bit more crispy on the outside. So let's take a look at one of these wings. They got a nice and crispy. If I didn't know these were frozen, I thought that these would be made from fresh because they're looking pretty good. Let's see what the scraping the knife sounds like on them. So they actually look a little crispier than they sound. Let's give this one a taste test and let's see if we gotta sauce these up. So they are pretty crispy, but not as crispy as I could get these if they were made from fresh. And these are quite delicious, but I think with a little buffalo sauce and a dip, these are gonna be absolutely fantastic. So let's get these in a bowl. And now that I'm handling them, they seem pretty crispy. Taste test one of these before we sauce them all up. The flavor's unbelievable. And they definitely got pretty crispy, but I'm in the mood for some traditional buffalo wings that are sauced up. What I like about when they're crispy, then you toss them with the sauce, there's that crispiness can kind of catch the sauce and it has little nooks and crannies to really work around and get all nice and incorporated. All right, so now let's take that sauce that we made before, toss these right on top. Give these a quick toss. Let's get our blue cheese dressing and our sauced up wings. These wings look unbelievable. I am super excited to try these now. I like my crispy chicken wings, but when these things are sauced up and I got a blue cheese dipping sauce, that's my absolute favorite. Let's give these a nice dunk. That was a super tasty, flavorful wing. And if you sauce them up after they get crispy and you serve them really fast, they're crispy and saucy at the same time, because the sauce hasn't had a chance to cut through the crispiness. These are delicious. I never keep frozen chicken wings on hand, but I might start doing this now because this is absolutely unbelievable and way better than I ever thought that these could come out. Let's get a flat, push these all together. That skin got really nice and crispy. These wings are absolutely fantastic. If you like this recipe video, click like, subscribe to my channel, or check out my crispy chicken wing series. I'll put that playlist right there. Thanks.